Hello there, and welcome to my tutorial on how to build an efficient kelp farm. Now, to build an efficient kelp farm, you need to keep two things in mind. The first thing is the kelp density, that is to say, how much kelp can actively grow. So this tank here is 17 by 21, which means we have a kelp density of 357 kelp. So that's 357 kelp that can attempt to grow. Now there's roughly a 10% chance that a kelp will grow every single minute. However, there is some kind of added inefficiencies in this when you add in the age RNG. So if I come in here and go into the F3 screen, you'll see that, for example, this one here right at the top is age 20. So if this was higher, this would actually have higher growth potential. You come down here, this one right here is stunted at age 25, which is its maximum potential. However, it's just stunted right down here. So we end up, as time goes by, actually losing kelp density as this grows, and hence lose the efficiency of the farm. So this number, the 357, starts to decline as this farm grows. Now, a lot of the designs I've seen use slime planes to sever the kelp at this level here and just cut it out every once in a while. However, you can't kind of truly sort of just leave that running, because slime planes are prone to break if the chunks they're in unload. Therefore, you've got to kind of like consciously be turning the machine off and on when you need kelp, which kind of hampers the output as well. So what you're going to need is you need something that can cut the age RNG out of the equation. And you need something to increase kelp density per volume, and on top of that you also need something that is truly sort of AFKable, so you can just leave it there, and if you, for example, happen to log off by accident without switching the machine off, it doesn't matter, the machine will just go on forever. So I'll show you what I came up with. So this trench design is what I came up with. This is a 4x8 arrangement in which you've got your kelp growing in the middle, and then you've got your pistons and observers. So what happens is, when this kelp grows, this observer detects a change in this block, which is then detected by this observer, goes into this observer, and fires this piston and severs the kelp. Now, a thing can happen where if your kelp grows here, it's possible that in the next tick it could grow here as well, before this can sever it. Now, that kind of limits how stackable this is, because if this water stream here, for example, was here instead, there is a potential that when the kelp grows here, it could turn this into source blocks, which would then break the machine. So this sort of limits the compactability. However, you can stack this up and up and up and up. An interesting thing as well is that, of course, we're losing potential growth spaces to this redstone here. But if I just get some lime concrete, and a piston. So we lose growth spaces. So this is, say for example's sake, our kelp. So we lose growth spaces to, for example, the pistons. However, this is stackable. So in the exact same volume as that, we can actually stack this up so that we get increased density from the kelp. So that there is already comparable density to just like a flat floor. And then if we do it again in the exact same volume as before, we can have increased kelp density by another factor. So if we come over here, this is the kelp buster, which consists of, so if you see this here, 5 lots there, which is 10 individual chambers per layer, so that's 30 chambers for the entire thing, with 16 kelp in each. Now, this, for example, inhabits exactly the same volume as our previous chamber over here. However, has increased kelp density and completely negates the age being a problem, as the kelp is just immediately broken. So without further waffle from me, I'll show you how to build this thing. So the best way to get started with this farm is to mark out the kind of central wall here with the fence gates. So what we're going to do is come over here, and you're going to want to place 2 fence gates like so, and then into 2 glass blocks like this. Now you're going to want to have 5 lots of 2 fence gates, so that's the first, and this is the second lot, followed by 2 glass. You should then have an arrangement exactly like this, in which we have 5 sections like so. Now at this point, you're going to want to start putting in your observers. So come down here on this side and put observers here and here. So this should be 8 blocks out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then 2 wide. like that. And then once you've done that, just repeat that on the other side. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then do that for all the other sections, so the remaining 4. With all of this now in place, you're going to now want to put your observers that detect these observers. So first of all, go from kind of one end of the farm first. So start off over here. So I'll do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 of them observing these. And then just do this like so until you reach the very end. Then once you reach the other end over here, just do the exact same thing, only reversed. So at this point you should have this kind of like pattern right here in which the observers themselves are sort of pointing into each other here. So if you see this pattern here, then you've done this correctly. Just make sure that they're all pointing kind of into this line right here. And then what you now need to do is do exactly the same on the other side. Next we need to install our observers and pistons. So if you come over here, put an observer facing into these blocks like this. So when you are done, you'll just have lots of observers facing this way, and you won't be able to see any of the arrow observers anymore. So you just fill all of this up with observers all the way through. Now with the pistons, it's just a simple case of placing them like so that they face into the little kind of chambers. This bit is quite sort of easy, and it's kind of very self-explanatory because it's just, repeating the same pattern over and over again. It's all just a case of which way the blocks are facing. So as long as you've kind of got that down, then this should be, it should go off completely well without any hitch at all. So yeah, you just fill this all the way up with your pistons. Now that all our pistons are in play, we're going to have to build up the glass walls now. So if you come up here like this should be 5 blocks high in total, like so. So just build a 5 block high wall of glass all the way around this. You can alternatively sort of just leave the glass on this bit for the chambers themselves and save glass in these sections here, bar the internal part, but this is just your own preference, so do whatever one of these you feel is best, but for mine I'm just going to do a solid wall. And now we're back to our center here with our fence gates and internal wall. So build this wall up to about the same height as the last one, but kind of do it in stages so you can reach the top of your fence gates here. So build up to about this height first, about the height of the pistons. Okay, so before we put this wall to the same height as this one, we're going to want to fill up these little trenches here. So just fill this all the way up like so, and then place a water block here, and that will create source blocks all the way down here. Now you can, of course, when you get the flowing water, expect it to just flow down into here. But I found there was an interesting quirk in which if there was no source blocks at the height of the piston, sometimes the kelp would sort of stop here just before the piston head and refuse to kind of like flow any higher, regardless of the 1.13 water rules. But I found an interesting, quite easy fix is you just fill this all in with water source blocks. It means that when this piston fires and deletes this source block when it destroys the kelp, it will be replenished by the blocks around it. So you just repeat that process by just filling up all of these trenches right here. Now, once we reach this stage right here, we can feel free to raise these walls up to the same level here. You're also going to want to fill this up completely with glass blocks all the way up alongside doing the central column. So best start with the central column first with your birch fence gates, and then move on to these afterwards. So now we create the water streams which flush the kelp right to the middle here into these fence gates. So just take any block you don't really care about, this is kind of temporary block, and just fill it up. So in this case I'm just going to use leaves. You'll be punching this out later, so you just fill it up all the way with leaves like so, and just create this platform. You then take two water here, and that'll flow all the way down here, and then you just punch these out from the inside like this. And then do the same on this side, so two water blocks like this, and then punch this out. And there we go, we've got our functioning water streams just like that. So then just repeat this process for the rest of the farm. Now before we put our kelp into these chambers, we're going to want to have our water stream that can transport them away. So first of all, you put two glass blocks down here like this, and then count 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That's 20 ice blocks here like this, and then you're going to want to come around here and then put your walls in to stop the water from escaping, just like so, all the way down. And then do the same here, all the way down, and then knock this glass block out. So here you're going to want to put your first water source, and then just plug this again. That'll stream all the way down to here. And on this bit here, just before it ends, on this last little piece here, you're going to want to put a slab, and just make sure that that corresponds with the glass wall inside and doesn't overlap one of the fence gates. And then you're going to want to replace this glass block and put another source block in here, plug that up, let it flow all the way down to about here. Plug this part up again with another slab, glass block, source block, and slab. Now at this point here, you can sort of choose what you want to do with it. You can sort of, take the flow this way if you so wanted to. You could then put this into an item elevator. You could drop that down a shaft. It's entirely up to you what you want to do for your collection system. That will then inevitably lead to your furnace array for smelting this into dried kelp. And now the bit we've all been waiting for. This is the part where we put the kelp in. So if you just jump in the first chamber, just throw these in, you'll notice that these fellows start punching out water blocks, but that's fine because they get replenished, like so. And then when you're done with that, just jump out of the chamber and then start again. And as you can see, the machine has already begun its work. As soon as these blocks are in, the machine will start and begin to get more and more efficient the more and more you put in. There we go, that is our first layer completed. So this farm is now operating at 33% capacity, which means we will be getting roughly one piece of kelp every 3 seconds, roughly speaking, on average. So it's all going to start collecting up here. At this point you can, have your collection system, because as you build the rest of the farm, it is obviously going to build up, and that would be, lossage otherwise, because you're going to be spending time here. So the next part is just, you do exactly the same as you did before. However, it requires a little bit of finagling and explanation. So to pack these farms on top of each other this efficiently, it's all well and good, but pushing these placing these observers in this kind of face-up position is actually kind of tricky. So it's kind of like best left to this part. I did a try before to have these so that you would have the layers of upwards facing observers placed in first before you built any of the farm infrastructure, but then that made kind of placing these water streams really difficult. In fact, probably much harder than it would be to place these in now at this stage. So I'll show you how to do that. So to place the observers, which is a little bit of a pain, but there's not really any way around it, extend the height of this wall all the way around, including the fence gates as well. So just raise all of this up by 1 layer. So at this point there's nothing for it but to go for a wee swim, so you just jump inside here and start placing your observers right here, and be very, very careful not to interrupt this water stream, otherwise sadly you will have to do it again. But it's not the worst thing possible, but it is a bit of a pest. So the biggest and most annoying part of this is, now that we've got all of these observers in place, is we have to get out again. So that unfortunately requires us to break these blocks right here and sort of like swim our way out. Now, if you break this one here, there's no water source block directly kind of below this, which then means that you can just swim out without spilling water everywhere. However, it is a wee bit of a pain, but we just sort of have to deal with it, because this is the easiest way I've found of doing this. Of all the other ways I've experimented with and kind of tested with, this was the kind of best way I could sort of muster, to be honest. Okay, now with all of these observers in, the job becomes much easier, so you just have to replace these blocks here with observers again, and just repeat the process like before. Now with this hopper floor completed, you're free to go back to the start of the tutorial and just kind of repeat the process as before until you get as many layers as you like. You're not in any way restricted to 3 layers. In fact, yeah, you could go you go up to 5, 6, 7. You could just build lots of these, like right next to each other until you get more kelp than you could ever need, until it kind of becomes a project in mad science. It's entirely up to you. Speaking of,